Hey everybody, this is Carl back again for another X-Men review. I'm covering season 3 of the X-Men 90s TV show. And in case you haven't already, please subscribe to the links in the descriptions below, like my YouTube, Twitch, Patreon, and follow me on my Twitter. So we're gonna get right into it. This is something we've been building up to for the past couple of seasons, the Phoenix Saga. And there's nice little arcs here with some filler here and there in between. So we begin here with Wolverine getting word from the Morlocks about Lady Deathstrike, who pretty much has captured the Morlocks just to lure Wolverine out. And Lady Deathstrike, aka Yuriko, used to be involved with Wolverine a long time ago. They're supposed to have been wed, but he left out on a particular mission. But it was around that time he got captured and put in the Weapon X program and lost his memory. So the promise he made to her to come back, he could not fulfill, which left her bitter and angry, and she went through cybernetic process to become Lady Deathstrike. So she's out for revenge and hired these Reavers, I think they're called, this kind of like cybernetic death squad, to help her promise, treasures in order to help fulfill her vendetta. They find this spaceship deep in underground, not too far from the Morlock tunnels underneath New York City. And they end up, after luring Wolverine and Gambit and Jubilee in the following, they end up inadvertently releasing this gaseous entity that with tentacles coming out of his mouth that sucks the life force from its victims. So with teaming up with the X-Men, they managed to defeat the beast, or at least get it contained again. But thanks to also Professor Xavier, who's been somebody's been trying to reach out to him, and he is a mysterious entity and he doesn't know who this entity is, and they're trying to reach out desperately, but it's leaving Professor Xavier in agony. But he sends the team to investigate. He goes on the ship and starts to learn a bit more that this thing was like a prison, or at least a vessel carrying like a holding prison for this thing. That's when they end up going to they end up hijacking a NASA space shuttle. Or at least everybody except for Storm, Jubilee, and Professor Xavier go on this shuttle to intercept this alien spaceship that was going to, because Xavier couldn't really give too much information because he didn't get much information from this other telepath, this mysterious telepath that's trying to reach out to him, and he's only getting vague information. And of course, he's trying to get the X-Men just to trust him and just just do it. Trust me. I'm telling you what I can, but you're just gonna have to trust me on this kind of stuff. So Scott, being the ever dutiful foot soldier, is like, okay, I trust you, Professor. Sure, you never stood us wrong before. And I bring this up to a lot of people. A lot of people really, especially writers of comics, really do Professor Xavier kind of dirty, because as a leader, he has to make certain decisions that we might not choose, but you never know what you might end up doing when you faced with a certain situation. So you're unfairly Professor Xavier in this light. Not to say I agree with certain decisions he does, but you painting him in this light like he doesn't know that what he's doing probably isn't favorable, but it's probably like the best outcome that he will choose at this exact moment. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have chose it. So I don't think it's fair to label him across the board like, oh, he's a good guy, but he's, you know, kind of like Tony Stark, like, oh, he's like kind of like the real bad guy of the MCU because of certain decisions he made. That's not fair. Sorry, there's a car alarm going off right now. So this constantly kind of puts him at odds with not only Cyclops but most of the X-Men team. So he sends them out to intercept this ship that's being piloted by this alien named Eric the Red, who's working under this Shi'ar, because this is where we get the introduction of the Shi'ar Empire. He's working on this evil space dictator named Decan, who is searching for his sister Lalandra, who is one of Xavier's, you know, other love interest, who's trying to usurp Decan, who's, you know, trying to overthrow the galaxy. And he's on a search for this M'Kraan crystal. And while Eric is trying to hijack the shuttle, not realizing, oh, the X-Men stole the board. So they fight him off, saving like the pilot of the shuttle, who they have kept because he needs to pilot the thing because they're not equipped to pilot a shuttle. They stop Eric the Red, and they you know, the equipment are, you know, going to like spark and is about to explode. They went back to the shuttle, and you see like the emergence of this entity called the Phoenix flying through space, not realizing it's a Phoenix. But as they're trying to, they come to the conclusion that I can, you know, because Jean has to be the one to pilot this thing. So he takes the knowledge from the astronaut and saying like, oh, everybody gotta go. I can psychically, you know, put like a barrier around myself to prevent like any kind of potential radiation or whatever, to steer this thing, because this containment thing they can hide in that they can prevent them from getting hurt from the, you know, getting into the atmosphere again. So this is when she got merged with the Phoenix Force and survived. And then, of course, Scott is just beside himself at this point, you know, fairly so, because, you know, Xavier put him in a situation that, you know, they wasn't prepared for. And of course, Xavier, you know, challenges him like, you know, a true leader knows how to, you know, navigate such obstacles. Yeah, like, oh, you saying it's my fault? Of course, things get heated, you know, because Jean Grey is like the, you know, guidance counselor of the X-Men. It's like, oh, don't worry, baby, you can cry on my shoulder kind of attitude. She's there for everybody like that. So that's why it's such a devastating moment when the Dark Phoenix saga emerged and she gone psycho, which I always bring up. Can you imagine Psycho Scarlet Witch going up against Psycho Dark Phoenix? It just ends up causing the universe to implode on itself from the ensuing fight. And this mysterious entity, which we know later to be Lalandra, still trying to reach out to Xavier, but she's having a tough time of it for whatever reason. And this caused some kind of like feedback, which causes an emergence of the dark side of Xavier to emerge and starts attacking the members of the X-Men. And I kind of like this part because it's almost like it's not too different from the Onslaught saga, where Onslaught is the manifestation of Xavier's negative emotions and all the things he kept burying him inside. And it's like, dang, they could have made like an awesome Onslaught storyline in this. Matter of fact, I can't remember any other, I could be wrong, but I can't remember any other X-Men related TV show that actually explored the Onslaught story. You see, that's the thing with the movies too. They kept messing around with the Dark Phoenix thing, and it does not work. I think arguably is handled better in X-Men Last Stand, but they could have done a Onslaught story instead of kept going back to that same old well of stuff that we already were privy to. Do something with Onslaught is very awesome. Just this entity that's just knocking out these Omega level mutants left and right. It's an awesome story, which I will cover fairly soon up on the channel, the Onslaught saga, because as a kid I only read like little bits and pieces here and there. I never read the complete thing, which I'm very much looking forward to. Same thing with other X-Men stuff that I will be handling, that only read a little pieces of back in the 90s and early 2000s. Like House of M, for example. Anyway, like, thanks to Jean Grey, they managed to nullify that part of Xavier. And since Xavier says he can't trust, because with this psychic feedback, he can't trust himself, and might be a danger to the X-Men. So he goes to Mirror Island to speak with Moira McTaggart, who's now in a relationship with Banshee, another mutant who has the power of sonic scream and flight. Who you forget is related to Black Tom Cassidy. So Eric the Red teams up with, or at least hires, Black Tom Cassidy and the Juggernaut to retrieve Lilandra, who shows up on Earth, who you think at first is like a mental projection, but somehow she just beams down. It's like that part was just like always sketchy for me. Okay, you're the way it's being portrayed, it's like it's a mental projection that she finally broke through and speaking with him via mind, but she's physically there. Okay, you don't portray like she's beaming down from a ship and just coming through the doorway. That part is just like very sketchy. It's like, why are you handling that like that? But there's a kinship with at least a budding relationship between Xavier and Lilandra, and then Juggernaut and Cassie burst in, knocks out Xavier, takes Lilandra, and then of course Xavier gets the X-Men involved to help Lilandra, and they battle Eric the Red, Black Tom Cassidy, and Juggernaut, while the Gladiator, another Shi'ar warrior, comes in, and because he's just a powerhouse in his own right, can easily handles the Juggernaut and just tosses him aside like he's just like a rag doll. That's the level of strength he possesses. But the Phoenix emerges, tosses him into space, and Eric the Red's like, okay, this is way above my pay grade at this point, and so he flies off. But then it progresses into this arc where they gotta take on Daken, who is hiring the Starjammers to retrieve this M'Kraan crystal, power source that he wants to wield so he can have this ultimate power. Leader of the Starjammers happens to be Cyclops' father, of course. Only Jean knows this upon reading his mind, of course, nobody else knows this. And it wasn't until the end of the season that, you know, Scott and what's his name? Scott's father's name. Corsair. And of course, Scott meets up with Havoc and the X Factor crew, and it doesn't come across that, oh, these two are brothers. And they don't behave like, you know, they're brothers, and it's like they're like, this is the first time they meeting each other, which is kind of weird. Because later on, Scott brings up about his brother Havoc, and it's like, okay, that is Havoc, and you act like you never met before, and you got this kind of grudge or something. That's weird. So we later find out that it was Dakan who kidnapped, after the whole plane crash and the Scott and Havoc, you know, are parachuted out. Right before the plane explodes, they were teleported in Dakan's ship to try to use some kind of experiments. The wife died, but Corsair managed to escape thanks to the space pirates, the Starjammers, and thinking that all his family is dead, so he's no reason to come back to Earth, so he became like a space pirate. He was the Star-Lord before Star-Lord, or I think Star-Lord came first before Corsair. I don't know. He was like the Star-Lord too. And it was kind of funny that Corsair and Star-Lord didn't have no kind of space team up, considering that they're both from Earth and they're space pirates. Or at least one's a space pirate, one's a guardian. Or like a slash smuggler. So they come up with this plan to try to trick Dakan into thinking like, oh, we're bringing in the crystal, but he wants Scott to use this out the blast to take a shot to take out Dakan. It doesn't go exactly as planned. All the X-Men fight, of course, Dakan's underlings, who is loyal to the throne no matter who sits on it, even though they know that Dakan is just like a dictator. But you see an awesome fight between the X-Men and these aliens, because the X-Men is pretty much like a soap opera, but they time travel, they sci-fi space stuff, and just normal superhero stuff. So they're very well rounded in terms of how you can handle them, which I'm stunned that none of the movies actually, well, they did do time travel in Days of Future Past, but and they did a little bit of space stuff, but I don't know, it's just not the same the way like the TV show really, you know, does it very well. Which, by the way, I think if Kevin Feige does it the same way as they did with the early on in the MCU, each X-Men member should have their own movie respectively before they do the team up thing. So that way, unlike in the previous installments that we only focus on Wolverine or Professor X or Magneto, everybody has a moment. So when the team up happens, we all are familiar with everybody. Just why I'm setting up the way I'm reviewing this stuff for the channel, where I did a Cyclops story in the comic, a Jean Grey story in the comic, a Beast story in the comic, a Gambit story in the comic, a Wolverine story in the comic. We get a feel of every member. So before I get into the X-Men team up lineup, books and stuff, we're already very privy to everybody for the most part. I can't do everybody in X-Men lore, but I'm doing a significant amount, so that way whoever shows up, you're fairly familiar. So the Phoenix comes out because they can't absorb the powers of the crystal, who he can't control it, and it's gonna start absorbing everything in the solar system, and they gotta stop it before it starts really spreading throughout the galaxies. So the Phoenix Jean says her goodbyes to Scott and the others, knowing that she's the only one that can actually take this crystal and take it to the heart of the sun, where they think, oh, Jean's dead now. She got absorbed by the star. But she didn't die. You later see her show up again, who comes back to Earth and gets picked up by the X-Men, who he's trying to recover from the ordeal. Of course, the Phoenix is still inside her, and because she's experiencing human emotions for the first time, she doesn't want to turn that loose, which slowly starts to drive her dark. It doesn't help when the Inner Circle, or the Hellfire Club as it's called, because this is a Fox Kids show, so we couldn't use the word Hellfire Club, even though Beast at one point used the word hell in his because I love when Beast does his quotes of authors and poets, and he actually used the word hell. So it doesn't understand why he can't just use the word Hellfire Club. You already did it once, might as well go all out with it. So, and you also get a nice little cameos when like the recurrent crystal is going out of whack. You get the Earth is getting like hit, and the other planets are getting hit with like storms and all the other weather phenomenons on every planet. And you see like cameos from Spider-Man and War Machine, who's saving people from like falling debris and whatnot. It's really cool. And in another moment, you get other cameos from when the Phoenix started emerging. You see cameos from Doctor Strange and Emma Frost, but Emma Frost actually gets like a moment here with the Hellfire Club, and you get Sebastian Shaw. Of course, you can't help but think of Kevin Bacon at this point, because he did so well with the role of Sebastian Shaw. It wasn't until that movie I understand the full spectrum of Sebastian Shaw's powers, because I didn't really understand it as a kid when I watched the show a long time ago. So he can just, any force that's that meets with him, he can turn it to energy and like use it to make himself stronger and durable and so forth. Anyway, the X-Men takes on the Hellfire Club, even though they lose at first and get captured, but thanks to Wolverine, who managed to slip away, he helps set them loose. But of course, the Dark Phoenix is like really starting to take hold of Jean Grey. Although thinking that the Phoenix kills Cyclops, he still managed to survive because his mental link that he shares with Jean Grey is so strong that tether is still pretty tight. That's why he's not dead yet. And when she thought she might have killed Scott, that part of Jean emerges, and because there's an ongoing fight between the X-Men and the Phoenix, and at one moment the Phoenix turned a tree into gold that fell on top of Rogue, and it's like, it's not one of the Phoenix's powers, matter alteration. We know that now, but I guess that's some kind of display they didn't want to go with, some creative decision during the show back in the day. But she doesn't just turn things into other things like wood into gold. She can't do that. Who knows? I'm like, who knows? Let's see. Like the Phoenix. The Phoenix Force. Okay, what is the Phoenix Force actual power set? 9 Omnipotence, Future Life Force Tap, Concussive Force Blast, Quantum Singularity. Wait, it can transmute throughout time and space to fold energy back into itself, causing it to collapse into a black hole. Energy Absorption, Life Force Control, Psionic Nexus. Gives 9 infinite powerful and mental abilities, including telepathy, empathy, telekinesis. Matter transmutation. Wait a minute. Can transmute matter on a subatomic level. Oh, screw me. Turning wood into gold right here. Oh, excuse the hell out of me. Because sometimes I can get it wrong too. Like, I'm very, I'm pretty comic savvy, but not like all knowing. So excuse the hell out of me. The Phoenix can transmute matter, cosmic teleportation, disintegration waves, resurrection force, immortality, cosmic pyrokinesis, temporal manipulation, atomokinesis, existence mastery. So yeah. So excuse the hell out of me, everybody. But because Jean's love for Scott is so strong, she managed to get a hold of getting control of herself, and decides to fly into space, seemingly disappearing from the galaxy. But you later find out that she just went to another part of the galaxy, ran across another Shi'ar vessel that nearly killed the people on board as she's trying to dive into another sun, and the ensuing, I guess, collision or something, or emergence, caused a shockwave that devastated the surrounding planets in that other galaxy, which causes the Shi'ar Empire to take notice. It's like, okay, we got to deal with the Phoenix Force, because if left unchecked, this force will cause untold devastation whatever galaxy she will end up in. So, which puts Xavier and the X-Men in a precarious state, because they're not just talking about the Phoenix Force, you're talking about a good friend of theirs, and it leaves them with a quandary whether or not, okay, because you see this in X-Men The Last Stand. Wolverine had to put down the person not only he loves, but a close friend of his, because she would just go uncontrolled, because he's the only one that has the power to get close enough to actually do some damage, because his healing factor, keeps him from like disintegrating, immediately. So you, in the cartoon, you leave him with like a impossible scenario. No, not impossible, it's just like a difficult choice whether or not to kill somebody you care about deeply in order to preserve all life in existence. But they decide to fight for one of their own, because like, we can get the Phoenix under control, but no, you cannot, which you later prove, because they lose the fight against this trial by combat situation. And the Phoenix, in a way, or at least Jean Grey, used the power of the Phoenix Force to pretty much kill herself, and the Phoenix resurrects from the body, because there's no life in the body, in the host. So the Phoenix emerges in its pure form, the good form, and decides, like, hey, I'm not clouded by rage or darkness anymore, so we can bring back very like a nicely bold rap kind of scenario, like, oh, happy ending, because it's a kid show, we can't do it. But it'd be kind of, you can bring her back later, but it's kind of like, I would have left that there for at least a little bit, let them kind of stew in this for a hot minute before bringing Jean Grey back, because this seems like an easy fix, because like, it's not like living with consequences, but it's like living with the fact that Jean had to make this ultimate sacrifice, and they got to live the fact that oh my god, I can't, we're going to deliver the fact that for a while that Jean's not going to be around anymore. This is going to be an empty hole in all of our hearts in this mansion. But they Care Bear stared together and have the Phoenix borrow a piece of each of their soul in order to reignite the life force of Jean Grey. In between all that, we get little snippets. You get the Purple Man in this season, and because it's right after the first saga of the Phoenix, when she first came about, where you thought Jean is dead and Scott is in turmoil over it, and he visited his old orphanage where he meets up with this old orphanage mate, and she's taking care of these orphan mutant kids, and most of which are being adopted by Zebediah Kilgrave. And I'm thinking to myself, Kilgrave is in this? Like, maybe because Kilgrave wasn't like a like a C-lister or D-lister type of villain back in the day, so he wasn't on many people's radar like that. We didn't know kind of role he had with Jessica Jones back then. But if it wasn't for the Jessica Jones TV series, we wouldn't be very privy to how deadly and sadistic Purple Man is. So I'm just like, shocked. I was like, wait a minute, Purple Man's in this? I was like stunned. So yeah, Purple Man is in season 3. He only had that one episode, and he's trying to utilize these, because I guess I want to say, because they treat the Purple Man in this like he's a mutant, and he's not. He's like he was, according to like the TV show, he was scientifically messed with, so experimented on. So he's not a mutant, but he's using these mutant kids in order to like influence others, so he can have other control. But thanks to Cyclops, he managed to take down Kilgrave. So it's really dope. I was like, holy crap. And like, I love episodes like this where you get to see Cyclops shine. And people really crap on Cyclops, where it's like, he's like, oh, he's just like a stick in the mud. No, he's a leader. He's an effective leader. That's why I did his comic first, to show off like an exceptional leader he is, and what he is when he's not around the team. And like, there's a couple episodes in X-Men Evolutions that really show off how cool Cyclops is. And you get episodes like this, and an episode where he meets up with his father again, and actually know he is his father, shows off how skilled he is as a leader and an effective warrior in his own right. So he's not that too dissimilar to something like Captain America. So he later returns back to, after that adventure, he later returns back to the X-Mansion, and realizing how much he's actually needed there. Because that's my problem with the X-Men show, surprisingly, as good as it is. It's supposed to be a school for gifted youngsters, but it's just only the X-Men team, where these kids should be in this school. As I mentioned in the previous reviews on the previous seasons. Anything I miss? You get this solo stuff with Archangel, and then coming back, try to deal with Apocalypse, but he, it's a cool episode, but Archangel at this point just lost his mind. Oh, and he's recruiting other scientists to try to, and paleontologists. You can tell that somebody's been watching Jurassic Park, because some paleontologists he hired to try to look up all this historical artifacts that different civilizations depict apocalypse, and you get some Egyptian tablet, and there's these two archaeologists that straight up Alan Grant and his girlfriend from the Jurassic Park film, as straight up like them. And it's like, okay, I look at it, like, I immediately remember Jurassic Park when I see these two. I was like, oh my god. I don't know how many people picked up on that, but it's straight up Alan Grant and I forgot the lady's name, forgive me, but it's straight up those two. But they, the X-Men, at least a few of the X-Men board the Apocalypse kind of ship that's sentient, that Beast forms some kind of camaraderie with, but she ended up sacrificing herself in order to seal away Apocalypse and cast him off into space in this, sealed up capsule. And Beast gets all teary-eyed over it. It's like, this thing for like an hour, and you act like you've known this woman for, at least this ship, for like 20 years or something. And you got to part ways with her for the first time. It's like, I never was like, why are you crying over a ship you only know for like an hour at best? It's like you act like you had some kind of sexual relations with this ship or something. And then Archaezo's very flippant and like so obsessed with his title, obsessed. He's obsessed with getting back at Apocalypse of what he did to him. And he's turning against like the X-Men in his pursuit. And Rogue is like getting out of pocket because like I touched him, so I know what he's feeling, so we gotta help him. It's like clearly you're not seeing what we're seeing, that this guy is just going off kilter here. We also get like an episode with Bobby Drake. We get Iceman in this, and of course Iceman's his behavior is not too dissimilar to like Human Torch with their very cavalier attitude, because they're very young, cavalier, youthful arrogance. But here he's not, like, because instead he's like part of the original core group, and you get to see like a little Jubilee put up like an old video of the original core group of Cyclops, Jean, Beast before Blue Beast, and Iceman in like the classic original comic of their first X-Men introduction a long time ago. I thought it was really cool. It's just like you see the Marvel Girl outfit for a brief second in the Phoenix saga, which is like a cool thing. You get to see a little bit of it. And of course Bobby left the team because he was on the outs with Xavier, because he doesn't want to be told what to do. He doesn't want to fight, and he just want to live like a normal life, and he doesn't want to follow Xavier's orders and things like that. So they had like a falling out. But he had a relationship with Polaris, which we know now to be Magneto's daughter, another child of Magneto, and she still want to fight for mutants, but Bobby doesn't want to be involved with that no more. So he, thinking that she left and somebody ransacked the place, and thinking that she got kidnapped, his trail leads to the X Factor base. And of course, the X-Men started to help. And in this ensuing battle, Xavier come to realize that, I acting like his school, like a school teacher instead of being his friend. And that's where I slept up. So it's like, Xavier, you're never too old to still learn a lesson, and come around on the fact that like I mishandled the situation. I should have been more understanding of Bobby's feelings instead of acting like his overbearing educator. And then of course, this is probably the only spot I actually agree with a lot of people, how Cyclops is acting like you gotta stick up his ass the whole entire time. And it's like, you're gonna follow like Xavier's orders, he knows best. And it's like, this is the only time I actually did not care for Cyclops' behavior. But Bobby comes to realize that Polaris went on her own to join the X Factor, but and of course Xavier's shocked because X Factor, being led by Forge, is being financed by the government, the US government. And Xavier's like, I wasn't never privy to this by the government and stuff like that. Well, it's like, you of all people should understand about anonymity, because you are in a particular work with the government in another faction. We work in a different faction. We don't have to be privy to each other. Although if you're working with the US government, there should be some kind of, not that like the New York police have to be privy to what like the Navy SEALs have to be working with, but if there's like a big deal going on, there should be like like different branches of governments. Like, think of it like the Air Force got to work in tandem with the Navy, who had to work in tandem with the Marines and so forth. They gotta be some kept in the loop kind of situation. They don't need to know everything they all doing, but you gotta be in the loop, so that way nobody's in encroaching on another person's foot kind of situation. I guess that's where like Xavier might be probably coming from. But I love to see like Bobby in this. Like Bobby is an awesome character. I will eventually do a Iceman comic run. Eventually, it's coming up because I just finished up with Colossus comic story Bloodline, which should be on coming up on YouTube pretty soon. But the next comic will be his sister Yelena, aka Magic. And don't know which one I'm going to be tackling next. I think might be Cable and Bishop after that. But anyway, that's pretty much like season 3. Of course, you get a little bit with the Savage Lands. Not really my favorite episode, where Sauron tried to kidnap Storm, and he's being used by this chicken lady, or at least dressed up like a chicken lady, who's worshiping this idol that used to run the Savage Lands a long time ago, until like the High Evolutionary showed up and banished them into the depths of the earth of the Savage Lands and severely weakened. I'm shocked. Like, it's just like when I was covering Jessica Drew Spider-Woman, which you can find on my YouTube channel as well, where there's a brief snippet of the High Evolutionary in her hallucination in her youth while she's on this Madripoor, and I'm like, I don't know why the High Evolutionary is there in her warped mind. Doesn't make any sense because he doesn't come into play at any point throughout the Jessica Drew story. So that was out of nowhere. But you see High Evolutionary here, and I just did a spoiler review on Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which you can find also on my YouTube channel as well, and my thoughts on that. But it's, it's like kind of funny. It's like, oh my God, High Evolutionary, we just watched the movie with you in. I understand a lot of people think like High Evolutionary is like one of, like, he put up there as one of the greats MCU villains. He's all right. He's not one of my favorites. He's all right. I think people put him up there because they're probably like pet lovers or something. But yeah, I mean, like we get like the last episode, episode 19, where Rogue's ex-boyfriend Cody, who she put in a coma by accident, gets taken over by these cockroach aliens that try to take over try to bring in the X-Men and part of the Hive. But thanks to Wolverine and Rogue, they managed to put a stop to that, and Cody's now part of the Hive, and that's the last we see of Cody. Of course, I covered a Rogue's mini-series just last week where, get in touch with Cody again. Of course, he actually died in that story, spoiler alert. So we get a little, if you want to know a little bit more in detail, check out my spoiler review on the Rogue story there. But yeah, that's pretty much season 3. Very good season. So far as like the fillers are concerned, I think like, well, it's hard to say, like, I think the Savage Land thing with Storm and Sauron, I don't think I care for that all that much. There's an episode with Longshot coming back with Mojo that, Jubilee, 15 years old, flirting with Longshot, who's probably in his 30s, late 20s, early 30s, more than likely. Kind of creepy. Not really my favorite. Ascension's all right, not really my favorite. I like Cyclops' battle with Kilgrave in his single episode a little bit more, but I think like the episode with his father was probably my favorite filler episode. Then Bobby Drake was the second favorite. But yeah, it's an awesome season. So we got like 2 more seasons to go through. We haven't really met up with Nightcrawler just yet. There's probably gonna be a lot of like cameos in the next season. I know Nightcrawler is going to show up. And there's constant, like, you know, snippets of showing like Deadpool in like hallucinations or people transforming like Morph, because we haven't seen Morph ever again, but transforming into you know, Sabretooth and Deadpool and Maverick, and it's like all these disguises, and you only get like just brief cameos of Deadpool, but not full on Deadpool here. But and then you get a little snippets of Doctor Strange and Emma Frost and Spider-Man and War Machine. I think that's pretty dope. Nice little dope cameos. Just show the wide spectrum of the, not all the way wide spectrum, but a good chunk of the Marvel universe that doesn't make it seem like X-Men's in this little bubble that most people seem to care for. I like my Marvel universe to feel like a Marvel universe. It's like, yeah, we can have little solo adventures with, you know, Daredevil over here and X-Men over there and Inhumans over there, but they all gotta be under one umbrella. I don't want them throwing out. Inhumans not my favorite part of the Marvel universe as a whole. I don't read much Inhumans aside from maybe Kamala Khan, but they're a staple. They're important to the bedrock of the Marvel universe. I don't want them throwing the baby out with the bathwater because the TV show sucked. That's why I'm glad that Doctor Strange 2 didn't really fully forget about them and brought back Black Bolt for a bit. And it's like, you know, bring them all back, but just do it right this time. Now that you're not at odds with the TV show runners, that everybody's in the whole MCU fold now. So yeah, just bring the Inhumans back, because this is the Marvel universe. Nobody should be left out at this point. I want all the Ghost Riders to show up, Inhumans, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage. I want like everybody coming back. I was like, everybody's here. Anyway, I was there's not much for me, video games for me to play outside, like Overwatch and COD 2 for the time being, until Street Fighter 6 and Final Fantasy 16 come out next month. Until then, I have more time to get more reviews out and more Chaotic Lore videos out for you guys. So this give me enough time to try to really get some X-Men stuff poured out before I get too busy with, you know, trying to stream video games for you guys. So look out later this week for Elena Rasputin, aka Magic, comic coming later this week, as well as the Wolverine spoiler review coming out later this week as well. And then the following week I'll have like a new comic, and then hopefully I'll have like season 4 X-Men 90s show all ready to review. Anyway, leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of the X-Men 90s show as a whole, but check out season 3. Come back, let me know what you thought of season 3 as a whole. And yeah, I will see you all. Well, tomorrow I'll play some games, and then but then later this week I'll have more reviews. Anyway, I will see you all soon. Take care. Have a great night. Peace.